Love the sinner and hate the sin has always been a saying that I did not feel right about. The question of why this statement did not feel right was raised as another statement was being discussed in a forum that I am on. That made me look into my thoughts more deeply. The statement made in the forum was that while Jesus ate with sinners and socialized with them, it meant that he loved them, but it did not mean that he condoned their lifestyle. As I look at the statement about Jesus eating with sinners, what strikes me there is that we are choosing to define who sinners are, and then we're labeling them as such. The way that I look at that occurrence is that Jesus ate with and spent time with all sorts of people. I do not understand why we have a compulsion to classify certain people as sinners. Besides, if we're holding somebody else out as a sinner, does that mean we're trying to imply that we ourselves are not sinners? Because that would be very contrary to what the Bible teaches us, because as I hope we all acknowledge, we each are sinners in our own ways. Jesus repeatedly told people not to judge. As Jesus himself said in Matthew chapter 7 verses 1 and 2, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." Now, when I look more specifically at the Bible passage that talks about Jesus eating with sinners, I found it particularly interesting that the people who made that statement were the Pharisees. And the Pharisees, of course, were the religious leaders of the day. Now let me quote from Luke chapter 15 verses 1 and 2 of the NIV. "Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and teachers of the law muttered, 'This man welcomes sinners, and he eats with them.'" See, it was the Pharisees, not Jesus, that labeled these people as sinners. Now I would like the act of labeling someone as being a sinner. I would think it's similar to the act of throwing a stone at someone who has sinned. That situation was illustrated in the Bible when people were about to stone a woman to death because she had committed adultery. Now what Jesus said to them was, "Let he who is without sin throw the first stone." At that point, the people surrounding that woman, they dropped their stones one by one, because they realized that not one of them is without sin. And I find the act of calling someone else a sinner similar to the act of throwing that first stone. I do not believe any of us are sinless, and I do not believe that any of us have the right to point our finger and cast that accusation at someone else. If I were to look at a person that drinks, or a person involved in a same-sex marriage, or two people living together and raising a family without being married, or at a person that has amassed a fortune as a religious leader, I am not certain that if I had to pick one to classify as a sinner, that my selection would be the same as that of many people who attend church these days. Maybe it's time to put the saying of love the sinner but hate the sin on the shelf, because who are we to judge? Let's instead focus on loving all of God's children equally, and accepting all of God's children completely, without condition, without reservation. I would like to add here that 8 weeks ago, I resigned as an associate pastor at my church. And what I've just been talking about is largely my reason for that resignation. Our church, while stating that we love everyone, does not accept a person living in a same-sex relationship as a member. Now, I did not know this when I joined our church, and over my 2 years as associate pastor, I tried to find a way to reconcile my own beliefs that a gay or bisexual person who loved God should be allowed to be a member, with the church's position that they could not be members. As I looked into my heart, it was clear, though, that I could not reconcile those positions. When it was made clear to me as well that I had to remain silent on this issue, it also became clear to me that I could not represent this denomination as a pastor and be true to what I felt was God's guidance. I think we are too quick to jump on some people's behaviors and label them sinners, while at the same time ignoring two of Jesus' main teaching points, which were to love our neighbor as ourselves, and also to not judge other people. Thank you for taking your time to listen to this, and may you continue to feel God's love surround you.